Hello and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast, midday movie babble break. We've been saying that all of weekend one and now going into weekend two, and I guarantee you it doesn't get any easier to say. But it's always fun to say because it is part of aGliff 33 Prism, and we are absolutely excited and over the moon to be here with you again for weekend number two. Again, I'm William Lindis, one of the hosts with Movie Bears podcast. We are a group of husky, hairy, huggable homos who love talking about film and, as you're about to find out, with the people who make those films. But it's not just me alone. I'm also joined by my co-host for today, Jim Pugliafico.
Yeah, hi everybody. This is Jim, and we are really excited to be joined by these guests for today's midday movie babble break, where we've got the filmmakers and people involved with four films today to talk about. First up, a month of single frames. We have Lynne Sachs is joining us today. Hi, Lynne.
Very nice to be here. Hello to everybody.
Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to have to be corrected on pronunciation, but from the film Acuitzeramo.
Acuitzeramo, that's correct.
Acuitzeramo, we have
That's correct.
Luis Aldana. How you doing, Luis?
Really good. Thank you. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, very good. And from CC Dances the Go-Go, we have Erin C. Buckley.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks.
All right.
It's so good to be here.
The C must be important, right?
Well, there's another Erin Buckley, so
Okay.
I just had to differentiate.
Well, that's okay. I don't mind at all. I just want to make sure I get it right.
You got it.
And from another short film called Our Service, Our Stories is Warren, is it Tymony? And Neil Beecher. Hi, guys. Hope you can hear us okay.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm having a little difficulty with hearing you guys, but we'll eventually get that sorted out, I think. Will, why don't you kick us off with some talk about our first film up?
Absolutely. So yeah, we've got a lot of questions for our filmmakers. We're super excited to dive in, but as we do, please make sure if anyone is watching live right now, type in your questions. We'll be able to see those questions and help get those to the filmmakers as well. And of course, if you're seeing this after the fact, don't type in those questions. We're not going to see them. That's not how time works. But we're going to start off with our first question is going to be for Lynne Sachs, who is the director of A Month of Single Frames. Now, this film is paired with the feature film All We've Got in the aGliff lineup. So if you're looking for it within the listing, that's where you can find it. And Lynne, I think probably the appropriate place for me to start with my questions for you would be with the interesting backstory behind this project. For those who maybe haven't read the description yet, A Month of Single Frames pairs both the words and the film of the footage of Barbara Hammer's 1998 artist residency with some of her thoughts that were recorded 20 years later. Lynne, can you tell us a little bit about the inspiration for the project and how all of that came together?
Sure. So I'll give a little background on Barbara Hammer because some people here will probably go, oh, everybody knows who Barbara Hammer is. And other people will say, well, oh, that's the name of a woman. Who is she? So I have to say, she identified herself as a lesbian experimental filmmaker. And she did that for probably 40 years. And so she had an enormous following. She was, really one of the first filmmakers to embrace both her sexuality and a radical vision of cinema in one place. And she did that over and over and over and over again. And so she was always reinventing the form that she would choose to explore a certain subject. Like she made a film called Dyke Tactics, and then she made another film called Sanctus, and she made some more traditional documentaries mostly about lesbian identified artists, but she also made work about her own life and her own relationship to her story, her struggles. And she had been really a dear friend for a long time, since both of us lived in San Francisco, and then we both ended up moving to New York City. And about year and a half ago, she said to me, well, I know that I'm dying of cancer. She lived about 10 years longer than she had been told she could. And so she saw on the horizon the end. And so she asked 4 of us, actually, I was one of 4 filmmakers, to finish work that she had never had the time or the inclination or the kind of answers to the questions of that film to do. And so I was one of them. And so she gave me footage that she had shot at an artist residency 20 years before. And so I dove into that material, and I was able to do like basically a first draft of the cut before she died. But then I was trying to figure out how to enter the material in a way that I was continued to converse with her and also the audience about the nature of filmmaking in a more epistemological way. Like, what is the meaning of film? How does it take us backwards and forwards? How does it make us feel that we're in someone else's way of being or thinking and or living? And so I tried to, in a sense, converse with her in her present and in her legacy.
And that's so interesting. And we're really fortunate and grateful that you were able to have access. Well, first of all, to as a dear friend of Barbara's, bring this stuff kind of to life, because in looking at this, it's almost like a time capsule or somebody's, I don't want to say home movies because that's a little too base for what we're talking about here, but that's what it kind of reminded me of. And she stayed in this artist residency for a month in this like shack at Cape Cod. Is that correct? And
Yeah.
Can you tell me whether you had any previous connection to this location, or how she ended up, in a shack on the tip of Cape Cod?
Yeah, because when you say artist residency, you think, oh, that sounds great, and they bring you meals every day, and it's really
Right.
cushy. But this was very beautiful, and so it was very much an embrace or a confrontation, and whatever you choose, with the environment on this dune in Cape Cod. But it was also very austere and challenging.
Yes.
And usually, in the more conventional approach to filmmaking is, like, if we have the means of production to do it big, we will. And she actually reduced filmmaking to like just the bare necessity. So she didn't have electricity, but she had batteries and maybe she kept her process going in a very, very independent and autonomous way. And I also wanted to celebrate that, to say to people, like, filmmaking can be like painting or writing poetry. It doesn't have to be a group effort all the time.
So,
oh yeah, somebody just I saw somebody wrote, Jim wrote about, did you all show Nitrate Kisses?
I don't know if we've aired that one here on at aGliff before. Jim's watching live right now and he can tell us, but Jim's comment, Jim Brunsell,
the other Jim.
Jim, our artistic director here for aGliff, he wrote in live and says, Nitrate Kisses by Barbara Hammer is a must watch for LGBTQ cinephiles.
Oh my God, yes, I love that movie. And she made movies, I could just go on and on about her, but she was really into, like, films about older lesbian lovers, or films about people who were into, trans dressing, or just like, she was always ahead of her time, always. And so the film is very much about her interior spirit, but also her engagement with nature.
So you spoke on this a little bit earlier, but so I found the ruminations on memories as experiences, the ones that are both shared and the ones that are very singular, the way we experience those memories. I found that especially compelling with this work. We're looking back at Barbara's recorded memories from 20 years prior. We're seeing things that were very personal and part of the moments that she and she alone experienced at that time. And yet we're all getting to now relate and experience and put ourselves into them. And I think there's a quote in the film itself, which I believe came from Barbara's words as well. This place is still this place, but this place is no longer this place. This place is a different place. And I found myself really captivated by just that way that memory both captures us in the moment and then connects us so many years later. Can you speak a little bit on the importance
Sure.
of like reclaiming and recontextualizing those memories?
I just love the profundity of your thinking about filmmaking, and those were the kind of ways of engagement that I was trying to explore. Actually, those words were my words on the screen, and in a sense, they're addressing her, but they're also addressing you or anyone watching. And that's the sort of, let's call it the novelty of filmmaking, especially if you talk about voiceover. Like, we take voiceover for granted, but voiceover is like the closest thing to entering someone else's psyche. And what other medium can do that in the way that filmmaking can? So I wanted us to both hear Barbara's voice, but also to be in the voice of the film as material or as process, like how I was trying to work, for example, with the changing aspects of the earth, like how we define here, and especially during the pandemic, we're even like challenging our relationship to the vocabulary of here and there. Like, let's meet here, and here is different because here, like, we're all here together, but we're not. And all of those things, I think filmmaking asks us or challenges us to redefine. And I think you really like pointed right to that. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Lynn. I feel like I wish I had an hour or two just to pick your brain on all of these things. But I have to move on to the next film, but I do want to tell everybody that yes, you should 100% watch A Month of Single Frames. You can find it as part of the, it's paired with All We've Got. If you're looking at Inventive, if you're looking in the aGliff schedule right now, you can watch both of this short film and that feature film together, and you absolutely should. Lynn, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next film I want to spotlight is Acuitzeramo, which is part of the international shorts lineup. So joining us is Luis Lopez Aldana, who is the producer, and he also plays Anthony within the film. Luis, this is such a touching film about two men who share a connection with one another after the loss of a third man who is a part of both of their lives. One of them is his son, and the other one was his lover. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of developing this story for screen?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, Miguel Caballero, the director, wasn't able to be here, but he and I have worked closely for about, I would say, the last 20 years. So our trajectories, artistic sort of collaborations go deep, and I feel comfortable enough answering that question. Miguel is actually from Acuitzeramo. He was born in that town where we filmed. And growing up there, and he split his time between Acuitzeramo and the States. And growing up, you know, looking back at his childhood, he remembered seeing a lot of older men and a lot of older women that were essentially single, you know, for lack of a better identity at the time, and for his understanding. And you know, as he developed his queer identity and came out himself and became a filmmaker, you know, the ruminations about his childhood led to that specific memory of seeing how many single men and women he actually encountered in Acuitzeramo. And so he took that a step further. What if, you know, one of these men, one of these women, specifically he thought of a man, what if he had been a queer elder, unable to, you know, to come out, unable to find his true self, and sort of live in this small Catholic, conservative, rural town in Mexico, you know? So I think that's where Miguel thought of sort of where everything came together for him as a story he wanted to tell.
Yeah, and Anthony, your character of Anthony is also quite everything in this film is kind of an enigma, right? And that's what I think makes it so compelling. We're drawn into the main character of it's Sal, right? Salvatore.
Right.
And into the story of what's going on, into this beautiful small town of Acuitzeramo, which is it seems to be like a filmmaker's dream to be able to shoot in a place that's so gorgeous. But and even your character of Anthony is a bit of an enigma, right? I mean, we don't really know Anthony.
Sure.
Things are revealed through the film in the movie, but maybe you could talk about your character a little bit, and like maybe kind of the ideas that went into that character about how his personal story is kind of kept kind of held close to the vest also, even when he connects to Salvatore, who you'd think maybe he would have maybe a more resonant connection with. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. It's funny, Jim, just as a little side note, when we were there filming in Acuitzeramo, sort of closer to the holiday season, sort of the town blows up to over 5,000 people. But when we were there was maybe between 250, 300 people. And when Sal Lopez, the actor that plays Salvador, when we were there in the small town, he made this comment that I didn't really think about. And Sal has experience. He worked with Kubrick, and he's had a 40+ year career in Hollywood, and as we were heading to set, he was like, yo, man, this is like our own personal lot, our own personal back lot on the Warner lot. And I was like, oh my God, you're actually right. It was just that lonely and that sort of so magical. But yes, I mean, we were very lucky to have the opportunity to film there. But back to your question though, for me, it was just such a compelling story and such an opportunity to dive into this rarely talked about sort of topic, like queer older elders in rural Mexico. It was something that never really I'd seen, and as Miguel was sort of conceptualizing the story, I said this is going to be such an opportunity to open up a dialogue. And as he was writing Anthony, as the story first sort of gets introduced, you think that he's standoffish, and he's like you said, he himself is holding who he is close to his chest, not really revealing how he feels, or initially sort of being like, who are you, man? You really didn't know my father.
Right.
And as the story progresses, a lot of things come to light. But for Anthony, I think it allowed me to really dig deep, and as an actor, really put myself in that situation and imagine and create this really tragic situation where you've lost an opportunity to connect with the man that you should be the closest to in life,
Right.
our fathers, and to be able to then do that with his lover, somebody that I never knew, and that I just think it was such a unique opportunity to explore all those things,
I think we're left with a tiny bit of hope at the end that maybe the connection they made might spur some more interactions between the two. But we have time for one more quick one.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, Luis, that we're so short on time. But
no, of course.
The film has, like I said, so many surprises, visual and storytelling both. One of which is like a little cultural dance that kind of appears through the film in a dream. Can you talk to us about that?
Absolutely.
What the intention of that was?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be quick. In Michoacan, in the state of Michoacan, where Acuitzeramo is, that's the origins of that specific dance, and that's linked to the Purepecha, which were the indigenous culture in that territory. Pre-Columbian times, that dance was only performed by the elders and the shaman, and so as they're stomping the ground, they're activating earth, connecting earth to the cosmos, and in doing so, sort of transport occurs, and so you've seen the film, and so as we see a glimpse of Anthony's father, you realize that they're there to sort of transport him,
shepherd him
from here out to the cosmos, and that's sort of none of that is explained, of course, you know,
No.
but that was sort of the basis of the choice to include that dance.
Well, that's beautiful, and thanks for the insight.
Yeah, of course.
I think that makes the film a little more richer, you know,
I think so.
to go back and see. So thank you.
No, thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an absolutely moving, touching film. Acuitzeramo, it's part of the International Shorts lineup. And it actually segues very well into our next story, because while this one was a story about two people finding human connection, so too is our next story. So I'm turning our attention over to Erin C. Buckley, the writer and director of CC Dances the Go-Go. And this one is part of the fiction short lineup #2. Erin, this film is a lot of fun, and I think that's because it balances two things, I think, relatively very well, actually. It has these very like snappy, fun narration cutaways, and then you have these very sincere moments of connection in the I don't know if I want to call it the main story, but like the story that's being told between Nikki and Cece.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about this project, sort of its genesis, and what helped spark the idea for it?
Totally. Thanks so much for the question. I actually originally did the piece as a short play down at Dixon Place, which is this fabulous, sort of very queer, very feminist downtown theater in New York City. And so my collaborator, Rebecca Whitehurst, who actually plays Cece in the film, played Cece to begin with and choreographed. And then I originally played Nikki, the one who speaks direct to camera in the film. My friend Aishan Chalat graciously stepped in and played Nikki in the film. They're both just so fabulous. But yeah, so it was originally a play. So I think you can actually feel that sort of sense of breaking the fourth wall that we really wanted to play with and figure out how that translated to the medium of film. Yeah.
So in the film, there's this kind of tension or question whether Nikki will kind of, you know, embrace this thing that I think she has this desire for, or we think she does. And was it ever, you know, she needed to bust out of her shell, her muted shell, but was it ever considered in the writing that she would not, even though, because that so often happens in life, that we're presented with these things like, oh my God, I should probably do this, but oh my, I don't know if I really will, you know?
Yeah.
Was that ever considered?
Well, yeah, I mean, she has that moment where she actually goes home mid-film. Like you know, basically she's kind of given the opportunity to like connect with this gorgeous go-go dancer who she meets at a gay bar, which I guess is a bit of a, you know, dreamy girl walks into a gay bar situation. And she's terrified at first, I think, of the possibility that she actually can connect to somebody and, oh my God, what would this actually mean? And so yeah, I think she's terrified mid-film. So I actually think coming back, or that she comes back the next weekend to Wanda's bar and actually kind of re-engages is bold. And to your point, Will, I think actually the direct address allows us to kind of go on that journey with her, so that we're kind of riding through the experience with her of connecting with Cece at the bar, but also kind of getting to be inside her mind, which is just running a mile a minute with neurosis for sure.
I think we've all probably experienced that at some point in our lives too,
I
you know,
think
where you
so.
look across the bar and you're in your head, you're thinking about later that night, you're thinking about like, oh my gosh, what if I get broken up with? What if we get married? What if it's a 3-week stand and you haven't even talked to them yet? And I think that plays very, very well here. And I think that the other thing that was really neat, there was this one line where I believe it's Cece says this, that's, "Will you let me love you?" Which I think was so appropriate for that thought, that self-neurosis, that self-defacing set of fears that Nikki had, that I think we as queer people experience a lot when we look at ourselves compared to the media representation of what we're maybe supposed to look like versus maybe the way that we actually feel when we're in that bar situation. That's a lot to unpack. like the entirety of like the way that like queer people think and view each other in such a short film. Can you talk a little bit about how you did that, how you pulled all of those themes together?
Oh, thanks. Well, I just feel like we've kind of all had that first moment of like possibility, of stepping into the kind of ring of possibility. And I sort of remember having that experience. There was this fabulous bar in Brooklyn called Caddyshack. And I remember my friends took me there, I think for my 21st birthday or somewhere there. Maybe I was a little bit older, maybe 22 or something, I forget. But it was some significant birthday. And I just remember going in there the first time and being like, oh, wow, I can see what's possible. And I kind of remember that. I remember they had multiple dance floors, and God, I wish that bar still existed. But just that sense of possibility, and that you can actually sort of live the life that you kind of dreamed up that you might be able to live. Mm-hmm. I think that being in those sort of queer spaces can really be helpful. I also think, film and television and plays and what we read, storytelling of all sorts, can sort of let us imagine that life that we maybe aren't sure that we sort of have the permission to live until we sort of see it.
You mentioned this was a play, right? Before, or this
was
a play
originally
that you put on?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about that. Is this like, are you a filmmaker that also does plays, or a play, somebody who does plays who decided, this would make a great film, a great entry into film?
Totally. Well, I actually, I trained as an actor at the Yale School of Drama, and my upbringing was as an actor. I trained as an actor, but I also was brought up by an actor. My mom and my aunt are both actresses, and my uncle is a director. So I kind of came up in that world and was in love with it from an early age. Originally trained as an actor, and then worked in producing for a few years at HBO and the Public Theater. And then while I was working in producing, I was like, I think I really like writing, and started writing and directing. And, because I was sort of hooked into the world of theater and theater community in New York, that's where I started sort of writing and making work. But I kind of had always been in love with filmmaking and also television. I just think those mediums are just so accessible. And I love that in film and TV, you can have a document of something and share it with people down the line, that it's not such a small audience that can just fit into a theater space. So I've really fallen in love with film and television and streaming and all that stuff. And I actually have a new series, a digital series that's streaming now called Platonic. So I think I've really fallen in love with shooting stuff. But yeah, originally totally from the world of theater. That's my background.
That's a win for us. But
thank you.
I could tell that. You could tell that there are definitely filmic sensibilities that come here, the way you play the characters off each other. And also CC gets her own moment in here to address the audience, which I think is wonderful as well.
Yeah, fun reversal. Yeah. Was important to me.
It's amazing how I feel like I need to get some of my own ambitions under control now, looking at like you and so actress, playwright, producer, director, filmmaker, check. I've got some work to do after this.
You're doing great.
So everyone should 100% check out CC Dances the Go-Go. It is part of the fiction short lineup too. I think you're gonna love it as much as we did.
Thank you.
Which actually brings us over to our last but not least film of this QA block. We're about to talk about Our Service, Our Stories, the evolution of the LGBT military experience. So we actually have two of the filmmakers here with us, both directors Warren Tymony and Neil Beecher. And I'm going to turn my question first to Warren. Warren, this is a very, very interesting project for a lot of reasons, not just because of the subject matter and the subjects themselves, but also because you have the stories being told by so many different storytellers. You have a few different filmmakers who are coming together to tell these stories. So can you talk to us a little bit about the genesis of the project? How did this come to be? And how did you pull together this like dream team of people to tell this grand story of the LGBTQ military experience?
Well, it started as we have a veterans group, senior veterans in the LGBT Center, the Los Angeles LGBT Center. And it was just a weekly discussion group, checking in with each other, you know, making sure that we were all okay, and maybe communicating some of the issues that we might have. So we had been meeting maybe for about a month or so, and there were some pretty dramatic stories told during that time. And what happened, the facilitator of the group, observing the group, went back to his management staff and asked if possibly they could do a documentary of our stories. He brought it back to us, and you know, we all agreed, okay, this might be a good idea. Mainly for me, this was a very cathartic event. And what I discovered was the same for all the rest of us. My case was PTSD that I suffered in the service based on MST, that's the military term for military sexual trauma. So this was not a coming out to publicly, because I'd already done it with my mental health professionals. But it was the first time I was able to bring the topic up with other veterans. This had such an impact on my life that it was sort of like bubbling over. PTSD, how it affected my life choices, and so forth. And by telling that, after 45 years, I never spoke of this. My generation didn't talk about things like this. You know, the whole macho thing and tough it out and all that kind of stuff. I never talked about it. I just went through the chaos of living a life affected by it. Anyway, that was one story.
Right.
The rest of us had other stories related to our experiences in the military as gay people and how it affected us, the silent trauma, that's what it was, the silent trauma that we went through while we were in the service.
Yeah.
And so each of us was telling our story. We saw the commonality in our stories. Unfortunately, the commonality was based on pain. And so we became a support group for each other. And we realized this was a story that needed to be told. So that's how it was.
Well, Warren, there's such a diverse group of veterans with, like you said, dramatic stories being told. Some of them may have had kind of an okay outcome in the end, but several others were just horrible, just traumatic to hear about even. Cannot imagine living through it. Can you talk about whether you have a sense from your perspective of whether things are changing for the better for queer folk in the military in recent years, like maybe some younger veterans?
Well, my perspective changed. I thought that there would be more progress than I'm witnessing. You know, I was 18 years old, 67 now. So I thought that there would have been more progress, and then the step of don't ask, don't tell, and then finally the acceptance temporarily of gay, transgender, lesbian in the service. Because when I came out, I became a gay activist also. So being on those front lines in those days and confronting whatever obstacles there were, I thought that that would continue in the gay community. Unfortunately, I've witnessed a conservatism come over the gay community, not as active as it was in the 80s, 70s, and 80s.
Right.
So through this documentary, listening to the younger veterans, they are going through as traumatic experiences that I went through and that as elder veterans went through. Why that is, I don't know, like my last statement in the film was, I fought for your right to be yourself. Why is this battle still going on? That's my question. As an elder, and as an elder, I decided to come back and support the younger members of the gay society, lesbian, gay, transgender, bi society, whether it's in the military or whether just on the street. But yeah, I'm a bit disappointed that it hasn't progressed further than
Yeah.
I think that's been one of the things that was so fascinating about watching all of these different stories, because every single subject that was in this film had either had some degree of trauma that you experienced, and that trauma definitely runs the gamut of experiences, but it all comes from that place of pain. But at the same time, there's also these stories of triumph, or of like what the military, like some of the positives that came from the military experience, whether it be from the bonds, whether it be, and even the bonds that are being formed now through this film and through the support groups later. I want to turn my question over to Neil about that experience itself. We have all of these different storytellers who laid bare their trauma and their pains and their experiences and the things that they've been probably either keeping secret or just keeping amongst those support groups for years. Do you have this sense that this was a cathartic experience for the subjects as a whole? Where has that kind of shaped the group since this film was shot?
I think that indeed it was cathartic for everyone involved in making the film. Most of the participants have not been active in the group, so we haven't really been in contact with them, and a couple of them were all of us at the center have to be 50 years old or older. So we're in the senior center, and a couple of the younger ones we discriminate against.
yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, we tried to include I personally want to include everybody, but you know, we've got the youth and the seniors, and we need to get together more.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we could do that. And you know, I think it's wonderful that we have this group, that, you know, that older veterans, LGBT veterans can get together and have that kind of sense of camaraderie and support. First of all, I know we're running short on time, but I want to thank you both for your service, first of all. And thank you for coming on the show and talking about the film. It's a wonderful film. It's part of the doc shorts lineup at aGliff. So thank you guys. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Well, absolutely. Thank you so much. Absolutely. This one is Our Service, Our Stories, the evolution of the LGBT military experience. And if you're looking in your program guide or on Inventive, you'll see it paired up with the documentary feature Surviving the Silence, which is also excellent. Boy, howdy, all four of these films are wonderful. I can't recommend all of them enough. So as we're looking to wrap up, I want to remind everybody that's watching this either live or recorded after the fact, you can find each and every one of these films as part of the aGliff 33 Prism lineup. Check the event schedule to find out where it's at, or just rewind a little bit and hear where I said it earlier in the talk. You can also catch us talking with more filmmakers all throughout the festival with our Movie Bears podcast, midday movie babble breaks. You can find us at moviebearspodcast.com for more film reviews from the Bear perspective. On behalf of the Movie Bears podcast and on behalf of aGliff, I want to thank each and every single one of our guests for joining us today. And I'd also like to very sincerely thank everyone that is watching right now or who supported the festival. LGBTQ film is such an important thing for all of us. Representation matters. And by you supporting the festival, you're saying, hey, I agree with that sentiment. So thank you so much. Thank you to our guests. Hope you all have a great day.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate the
Bye-bye.
opportunity.
Thank you so much.